Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and I am down in Jacksonville. And I am here to do a podcast just on the Jacksonville Jaguars, what's going on in OTAs, getting ready for mandatory minicamp next week. So I just kind of want to bring you up to date on a State of the Union. Got a chance to be around the team, got a chance to see some practice, got a chance to talk to some people in the building. So I want to share some insights that I've gained from those interactions. But before we get to it, since we're talking about the Jaguars, we got to shout out FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, my Jags to win the division are sitting at 190, plus 190 to win the division. We got to get those odds down. We need to make sure that the Jaguars are favored to win the division, to go back to back. That is something that we want to see. More importantly, that is something that is being frequently discussed in meeting rooms at the Jaguars Miller Electric Performance Center. Just in walking around the building and listening to some of the coaches and people talk, that is one of the things that they're really committed to doing, and that is sustained success. They want to make sure that everyone in the building understands that what happened last year should be the expectation and the standards for how this team operates going forward. And the only way that you can sustain success is you have to have a level of consistency in the way that you prepare, the way that you work, and ultimately the way that you perform when the lights come on. And in listening to Liam Cohen talk to the team and talk impressors, listening to the coaches, talk to the respective groups, you can tell that they're putting a lot on the team in terms of building where they left off. No one is certainly satisfied with the 13-4 record from last year. No one is satisfied being one and done in the postseason. And everything that they've done is with an eye towards being a team that is a perennial contender, not only in the AFC, but a team that eventually is a perennial title contender. Well, how do they do that? Well, they do that by stacking days upon days and making sure that the core players that are together and the coaching staff that is together and that return, that they build upon what they did last year by having continuity and consistency. Now, the continuity comes in the fact that last year, if you look at the offseason and what took place, they really invested in their own players. You think about the players that were re-signed, Buster Brown being one that came back. They want to make sure that they prioritize their own players. So the first year, they brought in a bunch of different free agents. They had different people come in. This year, the priority was making sure that they reward those guys who played and performed really well for them. They make sure that they retain the core. The core is satisfied. The core knows that they're an important part of the puzzle going forward. And then the young players that developed and performed at a high level, they reward them by not only giving them the financial security, but giving them a seat at the table when it comes to, hey, you're our foundation, this is our nucleus, and we feel like this nucleus, this foundation is going to help us go to the next level. So the continuity is important. The consistency comes from didn't have any turnover when it comes to the coordinators. Grant Udinski stayed despite having some offers. Anthony Campanelli also stayed. So offensively and defensively, everything should remain the same. Offensively, it's always going to be a level of continuity and consistency there because Liam Cohen is the offensive play caller. So no matter what, the head coach is the guy that's responsible for the offense. So the schemes, the plays, the way people are deployed, he plays a big part in that. So we're always going to have an opportunity to build upon what the previous success was because he's in place. Defensively, Anthony Campanelli staying, that is critical. Number one run defense, a defense that really dominated when it came to the takeaway game. The defensive coordinator returns. So naturally, what you like to think is, now we know the system, now we can grow the system. And that's what this is for. These OTAs, these practices, what they're doing on the field, it's about mastering the system. And now let's add different pieces to the system. Both sides. When you listen to Liam Cohen in the presser, he talked about just the importance of when they get back on the grass, and now that they know, is mastering your assignments and mastering what you've been asked to do. People have always been concerned about Trevor Lawrence in year 2 in the system. What does it look like? How is he going to grow? Well, he's going to grow immensely because, one, he has a complete understanding of what the task at hand is when it comes to getting to the line of scrimmage, having multiple plays at his disposal, being able to kill those plays, and being able to communicate it effectively to those involved, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the perimeter playmakers, all of those things. The other part of, we talked about the consistency, is he now really understands the nuances of each play. time on task, the number of reps that he got last year as the starting quarterback provides him the opportunity to understand how the X's and O's come to life. And when you understand how the X's and O's come to life, now you can put your own personal touch on it. Think about being a person who cooks at the barbecue and you have the recipe and you know how to do all the things according to the script. Well, once you've mastered the recipe, then you can start adding your own seasoning to it to make sure that it has the kind of flavor that you want. This offseason, watching this team practice, I can see Trevor Lawrence kind of putting his own flavor and spin on this offense, whether it's the timing with the wide receivers or asking certain guys to adjust little things in their route to make it better and easier for him to get them the ball. All of those things are playing out. When I look at the weapons on the outside, Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, we've heard all the great reports about what they're doing in the offseason. And I know people will talk about, hey, they're in their pajamas, this doesn't really matter. But it does matter on the perimeter because we can really work on our game in the offseason because the timing of the pass game and those things, independent of what you would do with the physical part of it with the pass. So looking at Brian Thomas Jr. make almost a fantastic catch a day, being more comfortable with the vertical game and more comfortable on some of the things that he's being asked to do playing on the outside. Parker Washington continuing to grow where he's making it, hey, am I number 3 or really am I number 2? Am I 2A and 2B when it comes to, hey, what I do with Brian Thomas Jr. or Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers having a full offseason to not only learn the offense, but to continue to develop the chemistry with the quarterback. And then you throw in Bretton Strange and you throw in some of the young tight ends as they're trying to find their roles. Offensively, to the eye on practice field, man, they look so good. The ball rarely hit the ground. And there is a command that the quarterback has that you feel great about as you think about the confidence of the team. Now, one quick thing, had an opportunity to talk to the young tight end, Nate Burkircher. And I think it's interesting what they're talking about maybe doing. Like they want to be in more 12 personnel, more 2 tight ends on the field. Some of that is to get more of the heavy guys on the field to counter some of the 2 high safety looks that defenses have been utilizing to take away the big plays in the passing game. Well, now you counter that by being able to run the football at them, and you're going to force the defense to drop that safety in the box. Some of that intrigue with the second-round pick was to be able to put him on the field with Bretton Strange so they can dictate a little more to the defense. Borkature talked about the playbook being overwhelming, but, man, he's so smart. He's so gifted. He can't wait to put the pads on. I'm excited to see what he does because I know he is going to be a big part of what this team does as they continue to grow the package on offense. The offensive line, Anton Harrison solidified at right tackle. We knew that some people thought there would be some conversation would he go to the left or whatever, but he's on the right side. We think about Cole Van Landing is on track to be available when we come to it, particularly in the regular season. So we love that. If he's not available, you talk about Walker Little, Chiwendoba being able to compete at left tackle, Ezra Cleveland penciled in at left guard. And then you just have Robert Hainsey at center and Wyatt Milam and those guys being able to kind of like Jonah Monheim and those guys being able to kind of figure out Patrick McCarry between center and right guard. That's kind of where the competition and where the things would be to be interesting to watch those positions as they play out in the preseason. Emmanuel Pregnon is certainly on track. He's a guy that has a lot of potential. That potential may not lead him to have immediate competition in terms of at left guard, but think about it as a slow cook situation that could get better, that will allow him to maybe get on the field and compete later in the year as opposed to early in the year. But I would say Jonah Monheim, Wyatt Milam, look for them to be in very competitive situations in the preseason to give themselves a chance to kind of crack the lineup. And if that happens, that is only a good thing because you would like to have 8 guys that are up and available to play. Because if you do that, then it allows you to have insurance against injuries. And that's certainly what we want to see. Defensively, because I feel like before I go defense, let's go back offensively. One more thing. There was a lot of conversation. I finally got a chance to ask some of these questions about the running game and what's going to happen, who's who and what's what. And some of the things that the Jaguars are looking for when it comes to the running game, just more efficient on early down situations. They would like to be a little better on first down so they can get into these 2nd and 5s, second and fours, so they can have these mixed down situations on offense. Well, part of that is just being able to be consistent in the running game on early downs. Look, there was a lot of love for Travis Etienne and what he was able to do for this team as a playmaker, a multifaceted playmaker and weapon out of the backfield. But there's a feeling in a sense that, look, there's a lot of meat on the bone that was left when it came to the running game. There are a lot of hidden yards that can be picked up. And there is a hope and an optimism that Chris Rodriguez, who does a really good job when you look at the analytics and the data, kind of meeting expectations on early downs in terms of running through contact, being ahead of the chains, being on schedule. There's a lot of belief that he is going to be able to hurt them as an early down back. There's also belief that Basho Tootin will be much more effective in his second season because he's comfortable and he has that big play element that you want. And then look for LaQuint Allen to be a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield and to be a difference maker in the passing game as he wins those one-on-one matchups. That's what he did in college, and that's the role that he could play for the Jaguars as we go forward. Now, let's talk about the defense, and really excited about the defense because the one thing that they talked about defensively is just being able to improve upon what was a solid foundation and a solid debut last season under Campanelli. The run defense was stellar, but they feel like they can be even better when it comes to stopping and defending the run. Devon Hamilton had a great year last year on the inside. Didn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet, but man, he made a lot of plays and created a lot of chaos on the inside. Trayvon Walker, as we know, is a big-bodied bully against the run game. He and Josh Hines Allen do a really good job of chasing things down from the backside, being stout at the point of attack, and really setting the edge. So defensively, there's a lot of optimism that this defense is going to continue to grow, and they like where they're sitting. Now, the guys behind them, very competitive situation. Now, I know Eric Armstead is going to be in the mix, but when they talk about BJ Green and Gardock and some of the other guys that are kind of flowing in, Wesley Williams, there's a lot of love for him and the length that he brings. But it's going to be a very competitive situation. And for the young guys, we'll probably get a chance to see them play a lot in the preseason. They'll get a ton of the reps because I wouldn't anticipate the starters playing a lot, maybe doing those joint practices. Remember, it's significant that doing the joint practices, they have 3 set. So for each preseason game, they have a set of joint practices. That will allow the starters to potentially work in those environments, which will allow the young guys and the backups to play in those games. That will allow us to see these competitions play out, but more importantly, it'll give those guys some game experience. It's not the same as playing a regular season game, but it certainly gives them 60 minutes of live reps to get better. And then we'll have a better sense of how they could perform when the regular season takes place. So look for that to be a big part of it. But defensive line, they're talking about those young guys kind of jumping in there and competing. And they feel like they have to improve that pass rush. And that pass rush needs to be better. And part of what I'm hearing and what I'm gathering and some of the things that I saw, the pass rush could be better because the coverage could be better. And when we think about defense, look, it's not just the rush that impacts the game. The coverage impacts the rush, just like the rush impacts the coverage. The stickier that you are on the back end, the more time you can buy for the rush to get home. When you look at the stats and the PFF numbers and Josh Hines Allen, how many pressures he generated, those near misses could turn into sacks next season with stickier coverage. Some of the things that we might see next year from this team that is a zone-based team, you might see a little more match coverage where they're playing zone, their eyes are on the quarterback, but they're playing more of a matchup zone where they're passing off defenders and they're playing stickier to them, closer to them. So that leads to more incompletions. That leads to more potential turnovers off tips and overthrows because you're a little snug to the intended receiver as opposed to spot dropping, seeing the ball and reacting later. So even though this team will retain some of their vision and break stuff, look for them to be maybe a little more match oriented when it comes to how those zone coverages play out. Also look for them to try and take away some of the free access on the outside. That might have been a big part of why Travis Hunter is being designated more as a corner than a wide receiver. But we'll see what his health looks like. We'll see when he gets back in action. And if he's healthy and available early, look for that to be very impactful in terms of how this team elects to play defense. When we think about the coverage, I've said it, vision and break, zone schemes. where there's some ways that you can play quarters coverage, cover four concepts, where you do have a little more bump and run, a little more aggressive play on the outside, much like Travis Hunter did when he was at Colorado, what Buster Brown does very, very well. You may see this team just evolve a little bit in terms of how they play on the outside to give themselves a better chance to generate a better pass rush because the coverage is tighter and stickier, and it allows Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, and some of the other guys to hunt. Another thing that you want to think about, safety position. Andrew Wingard was a critical part of the team last year. And I know he's not a star player, but I would say he's a glue player. He was a glue guy. He did a lot of good things to keep everything together through his communication skills, his ability to play multiple spots in the back end. He was a guy that was reliable, dependable, and trustworthy when we talked about it, safety. Well, with him out, there's going to be some conversation about Kellen Ranshaw having a bigger role. And also Antonio Johnson, what does he do? The young fella had a great year last year. At the end of the year when he got in, he made some plays. The confidence went up. I would expect to see him play a major role in this defense, whether it's in the back end as one of those two high safeties or as the big nickel that sometimes comes in the box to make plays. The safety position is going to be critical. I think we're looking for Antonio Johnson to make a big jump, but we're also looking for Ranshaw to have an opportunity to get on the field and make some plays. If he's able to do that, this defense will be able to really dictate the terms and play the kind of style that they want to play. Now, there's some final things that I want to talk about when it comes to the team and some of the stuff that the coaching staff has talked about. One, they talked about really creating a competitive environment where the practice and performance shows up. Like the habits that you create in practice shows up in the performance. So they're doing a lot of situational football stuff early. They're going through end of game scenarios, 2 minute. They're going backed up. All of those things. They're playing through those situations now. So when you get into the preseason and you get into the games, it's second nature. One of the things that Liam Cohen has preached since the time that he arrived, we need to be situational masters. We need to understand situational football. We need to know what to do in those critical moments so it doesn't overwhelm us. We don't succumb to the pressure of the moment. Working on it now, so that is great. Explaining the why. All those things should play out as we get into the preseason and the regular season to see this team more comfortable in those elements. Brian Thomas Jr. being really, really good, adjusting to the role. And they talked about, look, even though by outside standards he had a down year, if you look at the yards per catch, it was just the same. I've talked about this on multiple podcasts, 14.7 as a rookie, 14.7 as a second-year player, more comfortable. This is a team that could be a little more balanced, a little more by committee oriented in terms of who's the lead receiver. That means that the impact could be the same as it was last year, but the production is a little different. Regardless, instead of having one receiver maybe 13 to 1,500 yards, you may have four receivers that kind of fall in 800 to 900 yards, just because Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, BTJ, and even Travis Hunter in a role, they all kind of can have interchangeable roles. And given the hot man on a given week, they could be the number one receiver for a week. So don't think about this team having a true number one. Think about them having interchangeable pieces where the ball finds the open man, and that open man can be the number one receiver for the day. That said, I still believe Brian Thomas Jr. is the most talented guy in the core, and he is the one that has the biggest ability to change the way the defense covers the Jags. Look for him to continue to grow. I think that's a big part of it. Lastly, I would just say the chemistry overall with the team, I am just really, really excited about how this team continues to grow. Liam Cohen and these guys have really jumped all in. Talking to the young guys coming through, I had a chance to talk to Josh Cameron for a little bit, and they just talked about how the older guys are really doing a good job of bringing the young guys up to speed, teaching about the standards and the expectations, sharing the information, and really pushing them to quickly fit in, but not only fit in, but find a way to contribute. When you think about the great teams and the great teams that I've been on, particularly down in Jacksonville, it's the sharing of knowledge, it's the passing on of standards. When you share information and everyone is on the same page and everyone puts the team first, that's when the good things happen. And based on what I'm seeing in organized team activities, this team is operating under that premise. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about what the Jags will do this fall. So that's going to do it for the Bucky Brooks Show. We took it It was all about the Jags today, and it will continue to be all about the Jags a couple of times a week as we continue to grow the podcast. Make sure you drop a like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you check out all the cool things that we're doing on Believe. The podcast network is growing, and we want you to grow with it. Until next time, I am Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show, and we're out.